We're joined on INSEAD Knowledge by Professor Anil Gaba. You're Dean of Faculty at INSEAD. You're one of the co-authors of a new book called Dance with Chance, which is about risk assessment. Why should people dance with chance?
What we talk about in this book is that one should pay special attention to what we can predict and what we can't predict. It's very common with human beings to fall into this trap of illusion of control, to assume they can control much more than they actually do. In other words, underestimating the role of chance, underestimating randomness, and in that sense underestimating uncertainty, which then has very serious consequences and implications for risk management, for example.
Why did you think the book was necessary at this time?
Actually, we didn't write the book for the crisis. In fact, we had finished writing the book by August of last year, before the crisis really took its current form. And that is just again, just by chance that it's mashed with the current economic climate.
But who are you aiming the book at? What's the target audience for it?
So this book is actually aimed at the general public and not necessarily just managers. So we picked 4 domains as specific examples in this book. How did we get those 4 domains? We basically did a survey with senior executives and MBA students, asking them, what are the 4 most important domains in their lives? What are the most important things on which they like to spend time, on which they like to think a lot, and so on. And the 4 most popular domains turned out to be health, wealth, success, defined broadly, and happiness. So we actually picked these 4 domains because these 4 domains are very close to people's hearts. And then each of these 4 domains, we show that very often, actually, people assume much more control than they actually have. And we also show in these 4 domains the limits to predictability, so the point is not that the world is hopeless, that you shouldn't do anything. It's just that we should do a more careful assessment of what we can predict, what we can't predict. And wherever we can't predict, then the effort and resources is better spent on planning rather than hitting your head against the wall, trying to predict something which you can't predict anyway. So
you're saying this is essentially an illusion of control.
Illusion, exactly.
And that basically people just need to let go.
And in fact, so we talk about many examples in the book where we show that by giving up control, you can actually gain more control. So which we call the paradox of control. So it's something which doesn't come naturally to us. It's related to our evolutionary psychology. But once people understand this idea in its true form and are willing to kind of experiment in this sense, that by giving up control you can actually get more control, they would also do better assessments of uncertainty and be able to better manage their life, for example, in these 4 domains.
In the book you give the 3 A's of handling uncertainty. These are accept, assess, and augment. Is that then your basic model for dealing with uncertainty?
That's one strategy we suggest. It's like a heuristic, like a simple rule of thumb. We call it AAA. So the first step is to accept the fact that in many domains of our life, chance plays a very strong role. And so it's the same thing as trying to understand what one controls, what one doesn't control, what one can predict, what one can't predict. So just accepting that is a huge step, and it doesn't come easily to people, but that is absolutely the first critical step. So once you accept that, then the idea is to try and assess the uncertainty to the extent you can. We talk about various ways you can do that, with the help of models, with the help of independent opinions combined together through averaging, for example, and other heuristics. So we talk about those heuristics, what works well when in terms of assessment. And then the third step is to realize that no matter how good a job you've done with the assessment, it is in all probability still an underestimation of the true uncertainty. This could be because of things like the black swan, but it could also be due to events which are conceivable but at the same time very difficult to assess in terms of uncertainty. You know, an example of that would be, would there be another bubble, asset bubble in the financial markets? The answer is almost surely yes. But when, where, in which form, it is extremely difficult to try and assess and model. So this is different from the black swan in the sense that it's an event which is conceivable. It is going to be much more frequent than a black swan is. Yet at the same time, it's something which all models, opinions are not able to quantify quite easily. And hence that third step is also necessary, which is augmenting what you have assessed. So if you assess uncertainty, then you also have to be willing to augment it further, mainly to make sure you can have effective risk management in case of highly unfavorable events, or be prepared also for a positive windfall which could come your way. So it can work both ways. But that augmentation is very important for again, effective risk management and to be surprised less often.
You mentioned the black swan. The author of that particular book, Nassim Nicholas Taleb, has given you a pretty glowing recommendation written by true experts, he says. To what extent then is this book influenced by the success of Nassim Nicholas Taleb's books, The Black Swan and Fooled by Randomness?
You know, we use that story as an example to illustrate that there are two types of uncertainty. One type which is very regular, it's well behaved. You know, some examples are like demand for electricity. It's actually very well behaved, can be modeled very easily. Another example would be the time it might take one to go from home to office by subway. It's something which can be very nicely quantified, it's very well behaved. And then at the same time, there are a lot of uncertainties which can't be modeled, quantified or assessed easily. In fact, are often practically impossible to make a good assessment of. And we call that coconut uncertainty. Again, the example would be what I just mentioned before, the idea of an asset bubble in the financial markets. Now, this is it's a conceivable event. It has happened frequently in the past. It is going to happen frequently in the future, yet we have no way to kind of quantify or model the uncertainty around it. Earthquakes is another good example. We know that over the next 2 years, for example, there will be a major earthquake somewhere in the world, but when, where, it's very, very difficult to model, quantify. Most real-life situations are actually a mixture of what we call subway type uncertainty, which is the regular well-behaved, and coconut uncertainty. And that is in fact the reason why most models, why most opinions, why most experts, why most consensus-based decisions or judgments tend to underestimate the true extent of the uncertainty, because they are unable to take into account, you know, the coconut type uncertainty.
The book identifies 4 pillars of independent wisdom. These are be average, be patient, be risk aware, be balanced. Is that generally your advice to people in dealing with uncertainty?
That's actually more in the domain of investments, but some elements of that can be carried over also to other dimensions of our lives. For example, you know, getting a second opinion, but that works only if you have independence in opinions. What is also true is that in most domains, relying on a single expert is usually not a good idea. So you're better off consulting multiple experts, and you have to focus on the idea of independence. So for example, some Japanese companies have this very interesting heuristic they use, where in a roundtable discussion, the youngest person in the hierarchy takes a stand first, or gives the opinion first, then the next person, and so on, and boss speaks in the end. And the whole idea is to try and maximize the independence of opinions. Because the other way, if they go the other way, if the boss speaks first, the youngest person in the hierarchy might, for a variety of reasons, get anchored on what the boss has said rather than reveal his or her true independent opinion. So those 4 pillars which we talk about are specific to investments, but elements of that, of course, can be used in other domains as well.
Just to stay with sort of investing financial world, we've seen almost a total failure of risk controls and risk assessment. These are sort of issues that you're touching upon in this book?
We do actually, without specifically talking about the crisis, because it unfolded only after we had finished the book. So we managed to add in a bit right at the last end. But even then, there are elements in the book which are directly related to what we are seeing today in terms of the financial crisis. There are many reasons for the crisis. You've probably read a lot in the popular press, and there's been a lot of finger pointing and so on. But it remains true that one of the main reasons was, or is, ineffective risk management, underestimation of the uncertainty of the range of possibilities that could take place through some actions that were happening. And an example of that underestimation of uncertainty is, for example, unwarranted respect given to sophisticated models without truly understand when those work and when those don't work. Because underlying all models is a set of assumptions, and models work well as long as the assumptions match the real life reality. So there were mistakes made there. There was complacency, there was overconfidence in the human judgment, again basically amounting to a severe underestimation of the uncertainty. There are many other reasons too which exacerbated the situations, like insufficient regulation and things of that kind, but it doesn't take away from the point that one of the critical reasons was this whole notion of misunderstanding risk, not measuring it appropriately, underestimating uncertainty. In that sense, yes, the book is actually directly related to the financial crisis, which is a very good example of how things can go wrong, which we allude to very often in the book.
Professor Anil Gaba, thanks for joining us on INSEAD Knowledge.
Thank you.